Let's talk about the jet ski that terrified the water, embarrassed entire fleets of competitors, and then vanished almost overnight. A machine that was too fast, too powerful, too ahead of its time. A machine that Yamaha built when they still believed in pure, unfiltered insanity. This is the forgotten story of the GP1200R, the two-stroke monster that dominated a generation and then disappeared before most riders even understood what they were looking at. But before we dive into why this jet ski was so revolutionary and why it vanished, we need to go back. Because none of this makes sense unless you understand the era Yamaha was living in, the late 90s and early 2000s. A time when manufacturers weren't afraid to push limits, a time when safety committees weren't watching every move, a time when a jet ski could actually scare you. And the GP1200R? It didn't just scare people, it created legends. Back then, Yamaha already had icons in the water, the Wave Raider, the GP760, and of course, the Wave Blaster, the one that handled like a motorcycle on water and became a cult object. Yamaha was already experimenting with hulls, power-to-weight ratios, and aggressive handling, but they wanted something bigger, something that could carry the Yamaha flag into the next millennium, and they were not thinking small. So in the year 2000, Yamaha introduced a machine that instantly made everything else feel outdated. On the outside, the GP1200R looked sharp, aggressive, like a muscle car floating on water. But inside was chaos. Inside was the heart of a beast, a 1,176 cubic centimeter two-stroke triple that could push nearly 155 horsepower when tuned. Stock, it was already one of the strongest engines ever put into a sit-down jet ski. Modified, it could become an absolute weapon, but power alone didn't make it special. What made the GP1200R a monster was the way it delivered that power. It didn't accelerate, it detonated forward. Riders described the hit as violent, raw, unpredictable, and the closest thing to riding a bull at 70 miles per hour. On flat water, it felt like it wanted to fly. In chop, it felt like it wanted to kill you. And on the buoy course, it felt like nothing else Yamaha had ever built. The hull design was a huge part of the magic. Yamaha gave it a long, narrow, ultra-aggressive racing hull with deep chines that let skilled riders carve turns far tighter than most skis of its time. But it came with a price. The GP1200R demanded respect. If you weren't ready, the nose would dig, the tail would snap, and the ski would decide where it wanted to go, not you. Many riders loved it for that. Many feared it. And Yamaha, they loved that people talked about it. The mysterious part comes next. Because despite being brutally fast, incredibly powerful, and absolutely legendary today, the GP1200R didn't stay around long. In fact, just a couple years after its release, it was quietly replaced. It didn't fail. It wasn't unpopular. It wasn't outdated. No, the real reason is something completely different. The world around Yamaha changed. By the early 2000s, regulators started paying attention to jet skis. Environmental rules tightened. Two-strokes were being pushed out. Emissions laws, noise limits, and new efficiency standards were coming fast. Yamaha saw the writing on the wall. The era of big carbureted two-strokes was ending. Every brand had to adapt. And that meant engines like the GP1200Rs were basically illegal under the rules that were coming. So Yamaha made a decision that would change the industry. They began preparing for a four-stroke future. Cleaner, quieter, heavier, safer, but also less wild, less dangerous, and less exciting. The GP1200R was the last great expression of Yamaha's no-mercy design philosophy. And when the new regulations arrived, Yamaha had no choice but to abandon it. That's why the GP1200R disappeared, not because it wasn't good, but because it was too good for the world that came next. It was a machine from a different era, a machine that simply wouldn't survive in a world built around emissions charts and safety standards. And Yamaha, they couldn't risk keeping a model alive that didn't fit the new rulebook. But here's where the story gets interesting. Because even though Yamaha stopped building it, the GP1200R refused to die. And the reason is simple. The people who actually rode them fell in love. Not a normal love, not a casual, yeah, it's fun kind of love. A cult love, a loyalty so strong that the GP1200R became one of the most modified and worshipped jet skis in the performance world. The racing community especially treated it like a secret weapon. Tuners discovered that the 1200 triple engine wasn't just powerful. It was an absolute gold mine for upgrades. Bigger carbs, high compression heads, stinger pipes, ported cylinders, lightweight hull mods. Riders pushed the platform to speeds Yamaha never intended. Some GP1200 rupees broke 70 miles per hour. Some broke 75. A few even hit 80 on a hull designed in the late 90s. The more Yamaha tried to move forward with new four-strokes, the more riders looked back at the GP1200R like, you guys sure about this? Because no matter how advanced the new models were, nothing felt like the 1200R. Nothing had that punch. Nothing had that danger. Nothing had that raw, aggressive feeling that made every ride an event. Even today, more than 20 years later, people are restoring GP1200RS, racing them, modifying them, and searching for them like they're hidden treasure. On forums, entire threads are dedicated to finding clean ones. On Facebook Marketplace, a good unit sells instantly. And on the water, when someone shows up with one, everyone turns their head. Because riders know exactly what they're looking at. A relic from a time when Yamaha built machines without fear. The GP1200R is more than a jet ski. It's a symbol of a moment in history, a moment when Yamaha pushed the limit so far that the world had to push back. A moment when engineers built machines for performance first and everything else second. A moment that will never happen again. And that's why this jet ski disappeared. Not because it failed, but because the world simply wasn't ready for it. Yamaha built a monster. A glorious, uncontrollable, fuel-hungry, tireless monster. And for a few short years, it ruled the water. Today, when people talk about legendary jet skis, the Wave Blaster, the Superjet, the X2, the GP760, the GP1200R sits right there among them. It may not be as famous to casual riders, but to anyone who knows real performance, it stands as one of the greatest machines Yamaha ever unleashed. So if you ever see one in person, respect it. Because Yamaha only made monsters like this once, and once was enough to make history. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel. We're just getting started.